You said earlier that it was using the ideas of Carl Schmitt that democracy itself could be regarded as a kind of liberal window dressing for sort of binary systems for dividing friends from foes. And one of the things that I've been most struck by is how the aesthetic of liberalism, the rhetoric of liberalism, is so closely allied to authoritarianism. And Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau and figures that I feel like, I don't know, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, I would have just thought, oh, they seem nice, like the kind of people that you'd want run in a country, sort of modern looking
Right.
and sounding. And before long, they're like literally applauding Nazis. Now, when we'd spoken about that, on our channel, assumed that was just an innocent mistake, and the idea that they potentially, but I do know that her own grandfather was part of also a sort of, I guess, an amateur Nazi battalion out there, and that part of her grandfather's role was sort of seizing printing presses from like Jewish like organizations and stuff. So what you think it's? Well, I mean, that's just speculative, is it? Like that? It does seem like a pretty mad accident. I assumed it was like a Jungian kind of deep unconscious accident brought forth from the collective psyche. That Canada, in all its liberal posing, somehow like a fart just revealed. Oh no, we're applauding a Nazi. Like it was, but you think it's sort of like almost potentially deliberate.
Well, yeah, if it was a fart, that's got to be that's one of the all-time loud ones, I would say. I just don't believe. First of all, it's impossible to believe that they were not aware that this guy fought on the other side of a war where 42,000 Canadians died. Most people are pretty, I understand it was a long time ago and not everybody's read their World War II history, but if your country fought in a war, you tend to know who was on the other side of that conflict. Yes, there are some legitimate reasons. There of course were legitimate reasons to fight against the Soviets, among other things, because they had previously done a non-aggression pact with the Nazis. They're not exactly great actors, but in World War II, by 1941, they were on our side, and this figure Yaroslav Hunka, it was in the Waffen SS. I mean, they had to have done some research on this, and it's impossible for me to imagine that they weren't at least aware that they were asking Parliament to cheer somebody who was fighting on the other side of their war. So the Nazi element aside, but you add the Nazi element to that, and that scene, it looks like what my podcast partner Walter Kern and I called a soft opening for asking people to accept certain fascistic values. I don't know how else to interpret that scene.
It's a difficult phenomena, or at least event, to interpret at all. A few things I'd love to run through with you. Firstly, the emergence, or at least announcement, that RFK is going to run independently, and the fact that a significant number of Americans say they would consider voting for an independent candidate. Do you think that this is possible? Do you think it will alter the trajectory of the election? Do you think it could even alter the candidate that runs for either the Democrat or Republican Party? Do you think it will change the discourse during this election? Do you think that he's going to get like super attacked from both sides now? What do you think will be the broad impact of RFK's candidacy, Matt?
I think the candidacies of both RFK and Cornel West are going to have a significant impact on the election. At least I think that's very possible. Cornel West doesn't have to get that much support before he becomes a major factor in the race. For a variety of reasons. And it's the same thing with RFK. If he starts getting, even pulling the same numbers that he has been, between 10 and 20% of even the Democratic electorate, if you start adding the people who are among independents and Republicans who would consider voting for him, then we're getting into serious numbers. Now, the question is, will his candidacy hurt Trump, who's the presumptive nominee, more than Joe Biden, who's the presumptive Democratic nominee? I don't know, but there's a reason why the Democratic Party, actually both of the two established parties, hate these kinds of candidates, because especially at a moment like this, when the incumbent is so totally unappealing. I mean, he's clinically dead, basically, right? So if given the option of voting for somebody who's still alive and breathing and able to speak in his own language, people will do that, and I think both RFK and West are going to become real factors.